Welcome to this month's planning preview for March 6, 2019. I'm Larry Lukey, the planning chair, and this is Jason Beaver with the city.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So it looks like number 3, we've got a rezone, just jumping right in. It's going from ag to, it looks like a commercial, residential, all kinds of different uses there.
Yeah, this is kind of that large chunk of land. This was actually on our agenda last month. Yep. We're still continuing to figure out a couple of things, so we actually had to defer it to this month. But this would be the remaining kind of agricultural land at the northeast corner of 41st and Veterans Parkway. Yep. The Burns family is looking at starting to get their stuff ready for development. And then this will be just west and northwest of where the new Ben Rifle Middle School is going to go. So.
Okay, yep. So then we've got number 4, it's a rezone from ag land to, looks like single family and office. It's southwest corner of West 22nd and is it South Ellis?
Yep, absolutely, yep, you're right there. This is also a holdover from last month. This is the Kelly Nielsen's projects. He's looking at doing kind of one office lot on the intersection of 22nd and Ellis, which is typically what we see. And then the rest of it will kind of be all a bunch of single-family houses, okay. Everything to the west. So okay. Pretty big development out there in the west side.
And then number 5, it's a rezone, RA1 and low density and then office to it looks like office.
Yeah, yep. This is kind of a property that's east of Southwestern Avenue. It's going to be north when we ever get 49th Street to go through. Yep. There's a vacant piece of ground, and they're actually looking at doing a dance studios, looking at constructing about a 30,000 square foot building okay. out there with additional parking spaces for it. So yeah, it's going to be kind of a nice little building out there on that current vacant parcel.
Let's see here. Then we've got at number 6, a rezone from RD1 suburban district to RD2 townhomes. And it looks like that's on the west corner of, what is that? Is it Schaefer Avenue?
Yeah, this would kind of be southeast corner, if you get a little bit more descriptive, southeast corner of 26 and Veterans Parkway.
Okay.
So you have kind of those office buildings on the corner there. There's that bank, and then there was just a daycare that was constructed. Yep. And then to the south of this, they were constructing those Silverthorne apartments that you've seen right there. So this is kind of that land that splits that. They're looking at, it's currently for twin homes, they're looking at trying to do some fourplex townhome type units on that land. So.
Okay. Then we've got number 7, it's a rezone from C2 and streetcar district to RA3 apartment residential. And that's east of Southwestern Avenue and West 85th Street.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, this is kind of the southeast corner of 85th and Western. There's that vacant parcel that Ronning owns, yep. Currently zoned commercial. There's actually a company that's looking at doing more of those 55 and older senior apartments okay. that we seem to be getting quite a few of in the last year or two. It seems like they're something that we didn't have in Sioux Falls, and now it seems like we're trying to catch up with that specific market. So,
yeah, there has been a lot of those.
Yes.
The number 8, rezone from ag to, it looks like S1 and rec. And that's north of 41st Street and Powderhouse Road?
Yep. This is just east of the one that we discussed in number 3. This is actually the location for the new Ben Rifle Middle School of the school district. So they're getting their property zoned and transferred and ready to get going on it. So.
Had a lot of school stuff lately.
Yes.
So number 9, preliminary subdivision plan for Pine Knoll Addition. What is it? That's southwest corner, is that like Ellis?
Yep. This preliminary subdivision plan will actually go along with the rezoning that we talked about. At number 4, that's Kelly Nielsen's single family okay. with that one office lot zoning. So.
Okay. And then number 10, we've got preliminary subdivision plan, the Burns Addition, located at South Veterans Parkway and East 41st Street.
Yep, and then this is the preliminary subdivision plan that will go along with the Burns land on the rezoning number 3 that's just west of the new middle schools.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then we've got number 11, initial development plan for the Avera McKennan Hospital main campus, at their main campus.
Yeah, it's for their main campus. We actually are finally getting their initial development plan to kind of get what's currently on the campus. and then also
okay.
specifically kind of for that presentation sister's house. Okay. But we like to get these initial development plans. They're a good way for us to continue to plan these major core institutions that we seem to continue to grow and still work with the neighborhood on keeping, the neighborhood aspect and feel of it, but giving them a heads up on, hey, Avera's looking to grow to 26th Street and 7th and Cliff on the bookends is what we're trying
kind of give them that future plan, just because, as you know, we run into that a lot where, I didn't know that this was coming, but there has been a plan out there in place that this is what we're planning on doing. So
work with them, and just to kind of give an idea that we do plan these major institutions like Avera, like Sanford, like Augie, like USF, like the Veterans Hospital. I mean, those are things that we're cognizant about how they need to grow, but also concerned about not wrecking the existing core neighborhoods. So having them work in harmony, kind of.
Let's see here. Then we've got number 12, a conditional use permit for a full-service restaurant establishment located within 500 feet of a sensitive area. Looks like is that south? Is it Southway? Is what
you
it's
nailed
called?
it there. The Southway Center. This is that Ethiopian restaurant that was on last month.
Oh,
We had to defer them with some scheduling stuff. So back this month just to kind of add beer and wine. So
okay.
Yep.
So then we 13. Conditional use permit for on-sale alcohol beverage establishment located within 500 feet of a sensitive area, 3401 West 85th Street.
Yeah, this is the southwest corner of 85th and Louise, where there's the vacant land there.
Yep.
So the plan is to do a couple of strip malls along the west and south side, and then a bank, and then one of the tenant spaces that's looking to go in there is a casino. So
Okay. And then number 14, a conditional use permit for off-site parking located within 200 feet of a DD or AD form located at 4001 South Hawthorne Avenue.
Yeah, and this one actually goes along with our rezoning for the dance studio that we talked about in number 5. Okay. So the dance studio is going kind of on the east side of Hawthorne Avenue, and then there's one vacant, like about the size of like a house-sized lot on the west side. Well, they're looking at taking that and doing an additional parking lot, and then they'll provide a crosswalk along Hawthorne Avenue to get more people to their dance studio. So it seems like a good use of that existing vacant land also. So.
Yeah. One more thing that we wanted to talk about, number 1, ordinance to the City of Sioux Falls amending the 2013 Shaped Places zoning ordinance to the City of Sioux Falls. Jason, you want to fill us in a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. As obviously a planning staff, and with the Shaped Places zoning ordinance, once we adopted that in 2014, we obviously knew that we try and go every like 12 to 14 months. We like to do an ordinance amendment. There's things that maybe didn't work the way that we thought it would when we adopted it, and so this month we're looking at doing those kind of our yearly to 14-month update. Just some of the highlights of what we're looking at doing is we're looking at doing a couple of definitions. One of them is to really get a definition for a duplex. There seems to always be a confusion between a duplex and a twin home, so we're really trying to hammer that down. One other definition we're creating is actually for a primary form. So we've had, so if you have like a certain zoning district, let's say like an RA2, which allows apartments, the primary form, so the form that most likely develops on that site, is the MD2. So we're creating that definition to kind of give people a better idea of when you live next to something, what's it zoned. It allows a bunch of different forms, but here's most likely what it's going to develop in. We're also looking at adding actually daycare centers as an accessory use in some of these large apartment buildings. We've been having a real push from some of these like Boys and Girls Club, different daycares. Instead of going out and picking up the kids and shipping them to their centers, actually going out into the community, going out into these apartments where the kids are, and providing that daycare, and specifically almost afternoon, after school care to late night when some of these parents get home from work. So it's really been a good thing. We did one up in the Horizon Apartments, and it seems like something that they want to continue to do. And for us as a planning staff, it seems like an amazing way to get people involved in that and not have to go pick them up and ship them down here. Just let them be in their own area. So,
and like we talked, as the city gets a little bit more dense, we're going to find new things that like this that look at and see what we can do.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then one of the other things is we're looking at doing some landscaping updates, landscape buffer yard things. One of the things we're really trying to do is diversify some of these buffer yards. As you know, there's a certain number of units you have to provide, and each deciduous shade tree is worth this many units, or shrubs are worth this many units. There really wasn't anything in there that said that you had to provide a little bit of everything.
Okay.
It pretty much said you could do it however you wanted, and so sometimes we were getting all perennials, or we were getting all deciduous shade trees. So we're really looking to add a thing that is 50%, only 50% of it can be trees.
Okay.
So we get 50% of it is trees, and then the rest kind of fills in with our faster growing shrubs or faster growing perennials, some ornamental coniferous trees, to really give those buffer yards the ability to grow at different rates and really survive and look better to these, protecting these existing single family homes. And then one of the other things is we've been running into a lot of issues, and you've seen it on the Planning Commission, with required landscaping in the front yard, side yard, rear yard, with easements. I mean, we have significant drainage, electrical, gas easements. So what we wanted to do was give the planning director the ability to waive the required front yard trees, actually move them out of that easement, still place them in the front yard, which we've seen in the planning, at the Planning Commission through alternative site plans, but have them be able to get them out of that first 25 feet, still provide what they're supposed to provide, but not make them jump through that 2-month hoop for something that they can't really control, essentially. So, and that's kind of what we're planning to do. So,
Thank you, Jason.
anytime.
Stay tuned. We've got another segment coming up you're going to want to watch.
Sioux Falls Parks and Recreation has part-time positions available to supervise our open gym programs. Flexible schedules, afternoon, evening, and weekend opportunities are available. Apply online today. Great jobs, great experiences. To find your job, go to siouxfalls.org/parks-jobs.
Welcome back to your planning preview. We had a subject that we wanted to dive a little bit deeper in, Jason, and we have Councilmember Greg Neitzer here to explain the 2013 Shaped Places zoning ordinance change. Greg, you want to fill us in a little bit of what your amendment is?
Sure. We have had some issues in the last few years with 3-story apartments causing quite a bit of concern for citizens when they are next to single-family residences. And what I've been looking at is how could we make it work a little bit better. People have been concerned that the setback maybe isn't enough. Right now there's a 15-foot setback required if a 3-story apartment is next to single-family properties. And so what I'm looking at doing is just increasing that a little bit. We'll go from what's called a level B buffer yard, which is a 15-foot setback, to a level C buffer yard, which will be a 30-foot setback. And that's just going to add a little bit more buffer, but it's not going to be too much, I don't think, where it's going to make properties undevelopable. We have a lot of apartments that get built and there's not controversy. And this is just trying to recognize that the message that citizens are giving us is that when you have a 3-story building, they don't want it that close to lower density uses. And so I think it's going to help, and the 3-story just seems to create just a unique concern, I think because of its height and its mass and its scale. It's just bigger. And I'm going to narrowly tailor this amendment where it's only going to be required to be the 30-foot setback if it's adjacent or if it's contiguous to single family, which means it's right next to it, it's not across the street, and it's to a lower density use, and it's 3 stories. If it's a 2-story apartment, it could still be the 15-foot setback. If it's across the street, it still can be. It's trying to address that very unique case where you have a 3-story building that's going in, that's going to be touching the property of a lower density use. And so I think that will help. And it's also important to note that the City Council and the Planning Commission can always add conditions. So if there's a special case where we need to do more, which we've done in a few cases, we can do that. We can always add, but if we put too much regulation in place, we can't take it away. We can't reduce, and so we could make a lot of properties that you couldn't get the project done. So we don't want to go too crazy because we could make it so that you couldn't develop, and we can always add conditions. And this will bring the setback in line, I think, with the rest of the 3-story properties or zoning forms. With what they have, which is a little bit bigger setback. So it's just a little bit extra adjustment without causing, I think, too many problems. And so that's what I'm looking at doing.
Okay. And Jason, is that like RA3?
That would be
Or
RA2. RA2 is
RA2,
really
okay.
the zoning district that I think Councilmember Neitzert's honing in on. That would be those 3-story, 48-unit apartment complexes that we've seen in the last year and a half that have been a little bit more controversial within the neighborhood. So.
Yeah, and it's important to note that there's 3 apartment forms, and there's RA1, which is your lower density apartments. Those can only be 2 stories, they cannot be 3 stories, so those have not been an issue. RA3, which is a highest density apartment, can be 3 stories, it can be even more if it's not next to single family, but it already has a large setback. It was this medium density apartment, the RA2, that was the one type of apartment that could be 3 stories, that could be so close. So we're just adjusting the RA2 form because the other ones are not either applicable or they already have a larger setback. And the RA2 has been the form that has been the subject of quite a bit of controversy, if you recall, in the last few years at a few properties. But it is important to note that there's a lot of places where these apartments go through and we have no comment. There's no concern, there's no issue. There's 40 or 50 in the last 3 years. Almost all of them go through without any problem whatsoever. So again, we need to make sure that we encourage multifamily. This is not about saying that we're not for affordable housing and accessible housing. We need multifamily units, we need to encourage it. It's just trying to find that balance where we're sensitive to single family and lower density uses, and we also encourage that high density as well.
So have you talked to any developers and got their thought process on what, and what are they saying?
Absolutely, and that affected what I came up with quite a bit. I sat down with a number of developers that do multifamily projects and really talked it through, and we talked about the numbers and how they make it pencil out and what the impact would be of doing too much. So I did talk to them, and what I came up with and what I ended up with changed based on my discussions with them. But it's also important to note I talked to city staff, talked to them about their experiences. I talked to neighbors at a handful of these different contentious ones to get their input, and I tried to balance all of their needs, because you of course it ran the gamut. You had everywhere from some who would say don't change anything, it's just fine, all the way to some who would say you should never have an apartment next to single family, which obviously I understand, but that it just cannot work as a policy in the city. There's some places where you're going to have uses that are not completely compatible that are going to be next to each other. That's just the way it is. But you put in reasonable buffers to mitigate the impacts. So we had to find that balance, and I think I tried to find that middle ground.
Good. I mean, as our city gets bigger, we're going to get more dense. So I mean, I thank you for kind of looking at that, because we're going to start running that a lot more, I think, here in the next couple of years as our city tries to bring more dense instead of expanding roads, new roads, and basically making stuff denser. So.
And I think also too, after we have these difficult rezonings within the neighborhood, as a city staff, we specifically look at ordinances. Hey, does this need to be bigger or smaller, buffer yards, and we were starting to look at this, and kudos to Councilmember Knightsett for kind of taking the baton and running with it and meeting with all the developers and really coming up with what we think is a compromise that hopefully will work not only with the developers but also the neighbors, and we can get that additional space and maybe save some of these controversial rezonings from happening. So.
Yeah. Well, that wraps this up. Thank you for coming and joining us, and thank you for taking the initiative and doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for your Sioux Falls planning preview for March 6th, 2019. Thank you.